To the stream. Hey, here I go. Hey everybody, how you doing? It's me, Truth Teacher, and I'm coming at you live with my first live stream. Hold on one second. Add to the stream. Hey, here I go. Hey everybody, how you doing? It's me, Truth Teacher, and I'm coming at you live with my first live stream. Hold on one second. Hey Marlon, how you doing? Okay, I'm just trying to figure out certain things here. Hey, here I go. Hey everybody, how you doing? It's me, Truth Teacher, and I'm coming at you live with my first live stream. Hey, Flor de Oro, hold on one second. Hey Marlon, how you doing? I've got an echo coming up here, and I'm just trying to figure out certain things here. Oh, that's right. Because I need to turn off the sound here. All right. Okay, great. So everybody, welcome. I'm just going to let a few more people come into the stream, and then I'll set everybody live. So basically, you know, I know a lot of you, you're also subscribed to Radical Latino and Christina. And I'm sure that all of you have been on those marathon live streams that Christina's been having. Wow, we did like 10 hours, another 10 hours, and then 6 hours. So, you know, while we were doing those discussions, a lot of things kept coming up around the issue of identity because of being first generation American. And there were a lot of people who were expressing the idea that those of us of a non-American background who were born here in the United States, you know, we tend to identify ourselves with the origin, you know, of our parents. And there are a lot of people who were expressing the sentiment that we should not be calling ourselves that. Like, for example, I consider myself Jamaican. I know other people who were born here, they identify as Puerto Rican, Dominican, et cetera, and people are saying that we shouldn't be calling ourselves that because we're just American and that's it. And so, you know, this conversation was happening in the context of the Latino community. But me being a person of Jamaican ancestry, I was really relating to a lot of what was being said, because I, as a first generation Jamaican, find myself having this dilemma also. And I've spoken to other people that I know who are from other backgrounds, and they seem to have the same thing as well. So I gathered together a group of people so that we could discuss it. So we have my cousin Primadine, who is Chilean American, but she's also of Jamaican ancestry. So she's got like double layers of identity, right? We've got Christina, who we all know and love, and the Radical Latino should be joining us at some point. And I also have a very close friend of the family. I consider him like a cousin because our families have always been friends, and I've known him since God made dirt. Now, he's a little bit different than the rest of us because he was born and raised in Jamaica, and now he's here in the United States. So I brought him on because I wanted someone who could speak to the issue of how people back in the home country see us, the American-born children, when we go back. You know, are we accepted? Are we not accepted? And to what degree? So is everybody ready to get everything started? Give me a thumbs up or give me a hello or whatever. So I'm going to let everybody in now, and I guess at some point, once I go through all the questions, I'll open it up to the rest of you guys. You can join the stream and you can ask questions or share your perspectives, which I think is really relevant because, a lot of us from these, what would be considered immigrant communities, we're kind of like stuck between two worlds, right? And so we're trying to find our places of identity, but then we have the other issue of what about the generations coming after us? Like our parents came here for various reasons, but like I don't think a lot of times the ramifications of what it means to migrate to another country is thought out, right? Because in their minds, like they have their reasons for coming, but it's like they never stop and think, well, what about my children? What about my grandchildren, etc.? Like how are they going to relate to our culture and our society? So let me let everybody in. I am letting in Primadine. Primadine, how you doing?
Doing well. How are you?
Very, very good. It's a pleasure to have you here today.
Thank you for having me.
And I'm just introducing you to everybody here. And we are two different branches of the same family. You want to go ahead and explain to everyone how we're actually related?
Oh, okay. Yes. Our fathers have like a third or fourth generation connection through DNA as extended cousins.
Yeah.
So we are an extension of that. And my branch of, my grandfather immigrated from Jamaica to Chile. So that's where my connection with Chile comes.
Yeah. And we kind of got in touch with each other. We found each other because of 23andMe.
Yeah.
Well, for everyone that want to say that DNA is fake, like it's real. And the thing that I found really interesting was when we reconnected, your side of the family still had the story of our original African ancestor who came to Jamaica.
Yeah.
So that was like, whoa, this really, really is real.
Yeah.
And since then we have our own little WhatsApp group. And it's like, oh my God, I remember when we first made it, that phone was like blowing up all day, every day.
Yeah. No, it was nice.
Yeah. We even had a Zoom conference, to get to meet everyone. And oh my God, it's like we're spread out all over the place,
Everywhere.
Yeah.
From Israel to Australia to Spain, Argentina, Chile, Jamaica, the United States, Canada. Yeah. So we are everywhere.
Yeah. So God willing, all of this COVID stuff will cease, and then we can have like a little mini reunion, and then the big one in Jamaica, and we gotta have Jamaica, Chile.
Where it all originated.
And we gotta do one in the USA too.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Definitely. So we got a lot going on.
Yeah.
All righty. So I'm gonna let our next participant in. Tina, how you doing, sweetie?
What's up? I'm doing good. I'm all right.
Glad to have you here. So I get to host you as versus.
I know. Yes, nice to be on a live on somebody else's channel. Less pressure.
Yeah. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So you're like me. You're a first generation American born. Of course, everyone who knows your channel, they pretty much know your backstory. But for people who don't know your channel, tell the folks a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I am a first generation Dominican American. Both of my parents migrated here from the Dominican Republic. And my family lineage, as far as I know, all goes back to DR, except for one branch of great grandparents who migrated to DR from Maine. But apart from them, yeah, straight up Dominican. And yeah, so here I am now. On my channel, and like you said, I've been hosting these hours and hours long marathons, and yeah, despite some of the drama, the conversation has come out of them.
Wow.
And by the way, y'all might see my daughter in the background. I don't know, but if she pops up, so you might see my daughter in the background, but if she does pop up, just ignore her.
Oh, we all know Maya.
Yeah.
She's cool. Hold on a second. Let me see. Okay, let me introduce Mr. E. Mr. E, Ewaguan. Oh, your mic is off.
Ewaguan.
Hey, man, how you doing?
I'm good. Yourself?
I'm doing all right, dealing with everything. So I'm glad that you were able to join us today because I think you offer a unique perspective because you're actually someone from the home country and you can give at least some insights into what is the tension between, us who were born here, first generation in America, as versus people that are still back home, like
Right.
how we're perceived. And I don't know what happened to Radical Latino. He should be here. But anyway, I'm glad that you could be here with us. And I've known you like just about almost all my life,
Right.
So I'm glad to have you here.
Or I should say all my life, but yes.
All your life. Yeah. So where do you live now?
I live in Georgia.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you moved from New York and you moved down to Georgia.
Correct.
All right. Any chance of you ever moving back to New York?
It will never happen.
Okay.
Georgia's a very lovely place. More bang for your buck, and being a professional the way that I am, and what I'm involved in, I think it makes more sense.
Yeah.
New York is a very hustle and bustle. Georgia's a little bit slower, and it does remind you of the home country. So definitely, yeah.
Okay. So it makes you feel not so far away.
Exactly. And there's a very large West Indian community here in Atlanta. So
okay. So why Georgia instead of Florida? You don't think you would feel more at home in Florida?
The interesting thing is that Florida it's kind of an in between, because living in New York for so long, you're kind of used to the changes of climate. Florida is kind of just, from what I can see, it's just warm most of the time, so it gives you a nice combination of the two. You can still have the best of two worlds to some degree.
Okay, so you kind of like to have those change of seasons.
Yeah, I mean, and it's for me, it's again, it's an in between, because the heat in Florida is not the same as you would say New York or Georgia, even Georgia. And Jamaica. Jamaica's heat is a completely different type of heat. Like that's so it's not the same. It's a little different. And so yeah, it's a nice combination between the cool and that nice breeze that you would get and everything else. So in Florida. So yeah.
Okay. All right. So guys, give me a second here. I'm trying to get Rad. I don't know where he is. I'm trying to get Radical Latino in here. He should have been here.
By the way, based on what you've told me so far, I'm excited to speak to this radical person, because I think there's certain things that I want to set straight, and you'll see the two different sides of my thoughts. So, yeah.
Okay. Well, look, Radical, I don't know where he's at. Oh, speaking of the devil, hold on, let me cuss him out.
Don't cuss him.
Have him on speaker.
All right. I have you on speaker, by the way, so say hi to everybody while you're here.
Hi, everybody, while I'm here.
Yeah, knucklehead. All right, man. I'll see you soon.
All right.
Okay, so let's get into it. So I guess the first question that I have for everyone is, we already went and we established like where our respective families are from. Okay, first question I have for everybody is, why did your families decide to come to the USA in the first place? And I guess we can start with Prima D.
Okay. My dad left Chile when he was like 15, 16.
Mm-hmm.
Joined the Dutch Merchant Marines. Started working, so he quit school. He's the youngest of 14, and he just was working. They would travel all over Europe, and then one of his older brothers established himself in I think first Pennsylvania and then New Jersey. So that older brother was kind of like a father figure for my mother, and he just followed suit. And then the other brothers, like, they all worked, collected money, because their plan was to just stay for a little bit, collect money, and then go back and like their house and get a business started or whatever. So I don't know. My dad's been trying to go back since ever since he was. But he's stuck. He's here. He's having a house built down in Chile. My mother came when she married my father in 1977.
Okay.
Came, through me, because they married and they met. It was just so weird. They met through a mutual friend. So my mom's in Chile, my dad's here in the States.
Mm-hmm.
And my mom's flipping through a photo album. She's like, "Oh, who's this guy? He's really cute." He goes, "Oh, he's Chilean." Because at that time, there weren't a lot of Black people or Black-looking people.
Mm-hmm.
So my mother's friend's like, "Oh, he's Chilean." She's like, "No, he's not. He's American. He looks like a Black guy." And the friend's like, "No, write to him." So they started writing to each other, and then he came over to marry her, and then brought her back here to the States. So that was
all righty.
Yeah.
Wow, that's an interesting story. Hold on a second. Let me add Rad into the live stream. Rad, what's up?
Hey, what's going on? Sorry that I was fashionably late.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
He's not Latino time.
What's up to everybody in the chat and in the panel? How you doing?
We're all doing good, man. So I asked the first question, which is, why did your family decide to come? Well, first of all, for people, not everybody here knows who you are. So give us a little bit of background, like who you are, where your family's from and stuff. And why did your family decide to come to the USA?
Not a problem. I feel like I just came late to class. I'm so sorry, teacher. I got a permission slip. No. Well, I go by the name of Radical Latino. I am half Ecuadorian and half Dominican. Ecuadorian from my mom's side, Dominican from my dad's side. Mm-hmm. Well, it's not a secret. I think everybody comes here for a better opportunity, and that's the same reason why my parents came here for a better opportunity. My mom came here on a work visa because she was getting her doctorate degree in psychology. And unfortunately, my dad came here like in a floating door because obviously he wanted a better opportunity. And I think his dream was to open a bodega. I don't know. But, that's how the whole thing, went down. I think my parents met during a work meeting. It was like a whole work thing. I don't even know how life got my dad into the vicinity where my mom was at, but it happened. It was supposed to be about work, not flirting, but apparently that happened. And that's basically how it went down. And
Okie dokie. Tina!
Hey. So I think like we've been saying, my parents, it was the same reasons. They came here for, economic reasons, but I think with the mindset that they would eventually return to DR and retire there.
Mhm.
So my dad was the first one that came over. My mom and my dad had already been together in DR. But and I've said this on my channel before, but my dad, he came in the 80s, and I guess that the immigration process was easier back then. But so he got married to an American. It was a business arrangement. Hopefully immigration isn't listening to this. So that's how he kind of got his foot in the door, and eventually would get his citizenship, something like that. And so he had a friend that was already here. And so he paid his friend to marry my mom. And then that's how she got here. And then they divorced them, and then they married each other. So that was how they came here. So I guess that whole thing was a lot easier to do back in that day.
All right,
So
there.
yeah, so they started working here, and throughout the years, they started building their dream house in DR. And so, they got that done. So yeah, like I said, that is their plan to eventually go back. My dad is actually in DR right now.
Mhm.
Yeah, my mom, I don't know, she's kind of having second thoughts now because, now she got like her grandkids and everybody here. She's like, what am I going to go to DR for? But yeah, that was their story of why they
Yeah.
came here.
Well, I'll go ahead and I'll tell my story. So my story is kind of convoluted because we didn't come in the ordinary way. So on my mom's side, what had happened was my grandfather was actually a very prominent businessman and one of the founding members of one of Jamaica's two political parties. And to make a long story short, he was assassinated. And my grandmother kind of went into hiding because they were looking for her, So because my grandma was politically connected, she was able to get her papers to come here to the United States. And so she worked while she was up here, sent money back home. And and then she brought my mom and my my uncle and my aunt. Now on my dad's side, it's a little different. My dad was he was in the British Army, and he had been stationed in the UK and in Germany. You know something? I keep forgetting exactly why he decided to come to the USA as versus England, because a lot of Jamaicans were going to England. That was their number one choice. But Dad went back to Jamaica for a couple of months, and I think his older brother was here in New York. So I don't know. I guess it was because his brother was already here that kind of made the decision, for him to come to the US as versus England. Because if he went to England, he wouldn't have, basically wouldn't know anyone there. So that's pretty much why he came. And then he met my mom at a party, and the rest is history. So next, Mr. E. Hold on a second. There you go.
Yes, sir.
So, Watton.
What's up?
So, how did you all end up here?
It's kind of the same thing as Radical Latino. Parents met at a during work. That seems to be the thing. You're at work. You spend most of the time with your you know, with your coworkers, and so you have common interests and so on and so forth, and the conversations happen. And of course, you want to come to the States because there's better opportunity, depending, and I'll get into this later if I have the chance, depending on your social status and financial situation. And so based on that, you come here because there's a notion of better education, which is not necessarily true. But in terms of US standards, yes, it's a better life. And so you get here, and it's weird because you feel as if there's this understanding that you're in a place that's better for you, maybe financially, but in some cases not lifestyle to some degree. Just depends. So it really, you really have to look at it to say, and I'm sure you're going to get into this a little bit later on, what was childhood like in Jamaica versus here in the States. It's just a completely different thing. So and then you understand life from a different perspective, and then when you come and you see things and the way people live, you adapt to it. But then there's also that element of the pockets of communities, which we will discuss, I'm sure. So it's the same concept as like I mentioned, as Radical Latino.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the other thing about me that's a little bit different is that I was born here in the States, but I grew up in Jamaica and then I came back. So even though technically speaking, I'm not an immigrant, I kind of had that immigrant experience because when I came back, everybody saw me as an immigrant, right? I had a really thick accent. And growing up my whole childhood in Jamaica, it really was a shock coming to the United States. It's like I was all gung-ho for it, because, of course, while I was living there, I would come up to the U.S. on vacation on the summer, And from the perspective of a child, like, America was like Disneyland, right? Because at that time, Jamaica was under embargo, right? And there were so many things that we couldn't get. So to come to the United States, and you had hot running water, and you had color TV.
Right.
I mean, color TV was big, and you had more than one TV station. I mean, back in Jamaica at that time,
One channel,
JBC, that was it, black and white.
Up until the 80s, actually. I want to say maybe the mid to late 80s. Yeah.
That was it. That was TV. And TV, it was like TV would sign on 3 o'clock, and then it would sign off at like, what, 11?
Yeah, and that's it. You would have the national anthem, and that's it. It's done.
And that's it, So to come to the United States and you had like all these TV channels and all these shows, it was like, mind-boggling. It's like kind of got seduced. And then you come here, and the most traumatic thing for me was the first day of school. It was like so different than school in Jamaica, where everything was very neat, very orderly, very organized. Teachers could beat you if you got out of line. And the United States, or the Bronx, it was a free-for-all. It was, I'll probably make another video about what the educational system was like in the Bronx, but it wasn't Jamaica, let's put it that way. And that was the hardest thing for me to deal with. Just the atmosphere of the classroom and how the teacher related to the students and the students related to the teacher. That was very, very difficult. It took me a long time to get used to it.
Well, there's also the notion of a culture shock, because it's not just your educational system. It is also in the way in which you deal with every other individual. It's your accent. You talk funny. You walk funny. Your senses are different. What you understand is completely different. And if you think about it, you can compare it to maybe even some Jamaicans coming from the country, going to Kingston, for example. That's a very good analogy there to say Well, you're in the country, and you come to town, and town is like a whole another world on in itself. So leaving town where you were to come to the States, that's also another culture shock. So within the island itself, there's also that disconnect between the two different sides. So that already is another obstacle that you would face, even migrating from one side of the island to the next.
Yeah. So, all right. So, how old were you when you came up here?
It was 10 years old.
Oh, okay. Well, so you were like basically the same age that I was when I came up here.
Correct.
Yeah, because I was 10 when I came also. Well, when I came back.
Right.
Yeah. And so for the rest of you guys, you were actually born here in the U.S. and raised here in the U.S. So the question that I have for you is, at what age were you when you realized that your families were not the run-of-the-mill, Wonder Bread American family? And we can start with the Radical Latino.
I think from the beginning, obviously, I never heard a white person, talk like "¿Qué lo que? ¿Cómo estamos?" So I kind of already knew, okay, we're not the typical Brady Bunch type of family. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like my first language is Spanish. I didn't learn English until they threw me in school, and they're like, well, figure it out, and they just like whatever. And I was like, my mom tells me stories how I was trying to learn English, like I was like tranqui tranqui trinqui tranqui, I'm a 6-year-old kid trying to play, I don't know, Legos with some kids and stuff, and trying to figure it out, but ended up learning both languages. But just just knowing the fact that okay, we are from an early age, it wasn't that much of a conscious thing, but I knew that we were different. You know what I mean?
Okay.
I knew that we were okay. Like I said, not the typical, American Pie, Brady Bunch. If that makes any, does that make any sense? That makes any sense, right? Yeah. So that's I already knew that, but it wasn't something like a burden. You know what I mean? But it was something that it was, it was known.
Okay. Need to ask a quick question. So being Latino and coming, did you not find other Latinos that were in the same situation as you? Because even as a Jamaican, you can find other, and maybe not even Jamaican, sometimes it's other West Indians that you can identify with, even though you're in you understand, because there's pockets of communities that we could sit down and talk, and we can either talk about our food, our music, our things that we know.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Obviously my whole neighborhood, if anybody knows the Bronx, I'm from East Tremont and Grand Concourse. I put up a picture a couple of months ago of my neighborhood with all the flags: Haitian, Jamaican, Puerto Rican, Dominican, Ecuadorian, all the flags there, because that neighborhood is pretty much a melting pot of not only the Caribbean, but of some parts of South America also. Right. So growing, just as a kid, I felt like I was the only one, but obviously when I started growing up and started interacting with the local kids, starting to go outside and starting to play around, stick rock, not baseball, but stick rock, being stupid. That's when I ended up seeing that we weren't as different as I thought. We all have immigrant story type of stories, and we obviously identify with our parents' motherland when we talk about I am blank, blank, blank. You know what I mean? We don't identify with the American label. We identify with our parents' homeland, because obviously we are from, even though we were born here, we obviously are forms of the culture that our parents came from and trying to instill in us. You know what I mean? So I did find a lot of people actually with the similar, type of stories as me, and that I believe that is something that did not only unite us, but something that made me aware of, like, oh, okay, I'm not the only one. You know what I mean?
Right. And then you're not alone, because it's to a point where, again, and Tyrone, maybe you can understand a little bit more about this too. There's a complete difference when we talk about culture. We speak about a language, right? Now, when it comes to Spanish, that is something that culturally binds a group together. Okay, there's food, there's other things. But when you're speaking about Jamaicans now, and it's English, it's not American English, okay? It is the Queen's English mixed together with African and even some Spanish, believe it or not, because Spaniards did colonize Jamaica at some point. So there is also that element as well. So you have that somewhat of that disconnect from people who lose that patois that we speak. But then Spanish is Spanish. But then also there's the different types of Spanish speaking that comes into play, because you have your Dominican. I don't want to get too deep into it, but I also lived in the Bronx, so I kind of understand the difference between Puerto Ricans, your Boricuas, and your Dominicans. And when Dominicans say que fue, it's almost like a broken, the Puerto Ricans say it's a broken Spanish, so to speak. So
yeah.
you know what I mean?
Careful, you got the Dominicans on here.
All right, yeah, and that's why I say what I say, because again, I cannot speak to it, because as a Jamaican, I cannot say that, but I can pick up from what I understand, and so I can tell you, when it comes to a patois now, that's more of the thing that binds us together versus Spanish, where that's a stronger hold and bond. It should be between the Dominican, the Ecuadorian, the Puerto Rican community. But then again, how true is that? And that's what I'm going to pose out there as a question.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. For me, when I came up, I mean, by the time you came up, there was already somewhat of a Jamaican community in that neighborhood. But when I came up, it was only me and I was in them upstairs, Miss Sonia.
Right.
I was in them. It was them, and then there was one other kid in school. I think his name was Chadwick or something like that. So that was it. Like there wasn't any other Jamaicans in the area. So even though I spoke English with a very heavy Jamaican accent, to the point where they thought that they had to put me in remedial English. Like,
okay, so really quick, it's interesting that you mentioned that, because you have to remember that Jamaica's educational system is based off the British system, the UK system. So yes, you would say that the English that we would speak would be, even the way we spell color is completely different, right? So yeah, they would think, and these teachers were not educated enough to understand this is someone who is coming from a British colonized country that has,
what Jamaica was.
Correct.
Yeah. So Tina, same question to you.
I always had the realization that my family was not your typical run-of-the-mill American family. I think by the simple fact that, I grew up in a household. My first language was actually Spanish too. But, speaking Spanish, the food that we ate, the TV shows that my parents, watched, I grew up watching, novelas like a lot of, other Hispanics do. I don't know why I was watching them at such a young age, but, my experience was very much like that of other, Hispanic immigrant or child of immigrants, So yeah, I always knew we were different, but we were like different because being Dominican on top of that, and like y'all heard me say a billion times, that I didn't grow up around a lot of other Dominicans. So it was like, we're very different from white and Black Americans, but at the same time, we're different from these other Hispanics that are here as well. So yeah, it was like, in that sense, I always felt like I was kind of in my own little thing, just so different from everybody else. So that was more so, my experience. And I mean, not that I wasn't able to connect with other groups despite that, but yeah, I always kind of felt like the odd man out in most scenarios.
So at what age do you think you were when you started having this feeling that, okay, I'm not like all the others, but there's also these other Spanish speaking people, but I'm not quite like them either?
Definitely like 5th to 6th grade. I think that's when I realized, well, when I especially started to realize that I wasn't like the other Hispanic kids, because I think at that age is when you really started to see the different ethnicities kind of separating out a little bit. And the Hispanic kids, which here are mainly Central American, but you have some South American too, like they never really included me. And I felt it, I myself also sometimes felt kind of weird because by that point, I had the realization, okay, most people see me as Black. So that, I don't know, it kind of alienated me from some of them in some cases. Now, with that being said, I did form a friendship with a Salvadorian girl, but she herself hangs more with Black people. So maybe that's why she was drawn to me. I don't know. But yeah, so I would say that age is when I realized, okay, Dominicans, we are just different from Salvadorians and Mexicans and Bolivians. Like, we're very different. And being darker skinned, that definitely highlighted that difference as well.
Yeah. Wow.
Yes, yes.
Didi, how are things for you? Oh, you have to. There you go.
Yeah. I think just like with everyone else, the realizations of the differences comes in stages. Also, my parents weren't concerned with assimilation whatsoever. So I didn't learn to speak, although I was, born here, I didn't speak English until I went to school. And that, I think that first shock when I entered school, and it was like they sounded like everyone on TV. And I was like, oh my God. So I just remember crying, and the teacher just like sounded like Charlie Brown. Like sounding like Charlie Brown. I'm like, I don't understand. Wow. And I was in ESL for 2 years. It was weird. Then like the little things, when you get a little older, then you start noticing, oh, your school lunches are different. Like mother would make pan amasado, this homemade Chilean bread, and it didn't look like anybody else's sandwiches. And even like the little snacks or things that she made, it was everything that she knew from Chile. And it was weird. And the kids would be like, oh, what is that? Oh, what is that? Okay. And I grew up in Long Island. And at that time, the Latino community wasn't so big, but the majority of the kids that were Latino, when there were Puerto Rican, very few Dominicans, and a few Salvadorians, and more Salvadorians than say like Mexican kids. If it was, like throughout the years, then the population increased, but things like that, and even growing up watching like TV shows like Facts of Life, Punky Brewster. I know I'm dating myself. Brady Bunch. Like, oh, we don't do that. We don't have that. That's like, they're just their mannerisms, the communication between each other, their dinner times. It was a different tradition, and I was like, do I want to do that, or is what I'm doing at home with my parents? Is that weird? Is that okay? Like, I had many questions. I found myself, when you, like, someone had mentioned, like, when you seek out someone similar to you, and then, you want to seek that out. I found myself wanting to do that as I got older, like maybe like junior high, high school, seeking out other Latinos, but there was nobody else that was Chilean. So there were more, kids, like I said, that were Puerto Rican, there were this, or that. So if I would come home and I would use Puerto Rican slang or, whatever, mom, like, what are you doing? What are you saying? What is that? And talking to her, and she's like, we don't talk like that. And I'm like, well, it's okay though. It's still Spanish. She's like, no, it's not, So it was a culture shock within a culture shock, but it's I'm trying to assimilate with it, and it's my people. And she's like, no, you know, people are Chilean. I'm like, but there's nobody else around. It was always, you know, that, you know, dealing with that.
So what's interesting about that, so coming here at such a young age, and I'm going to date myself as well. Yes, watching Punky Brewster, watching the American shows and things like that, you get to an understanding of pop culture. See, that's the thing. And then at that point, it's like, well, this is what I do in my home. And then you have to think about the type of immigrants you're dealing with here, because you have some who are just strictly strong rooted in their culture to the point where nothing outside of their culture they're going to do. But then you have others, like my parents, figured, well, we are in America now, we're going to do these things like Americans, we're going to do these things, we're going to, you know. And so I was allowed to watch those things. And so growing up with that same pop culture, it gave me a better understanding of how to change up how I spoke, how I talked, and have an understanding of everything else. So it's interesting that you mentioned that, and then you start using these different slangs and stuff like that, which I think is very interesting as well, because if you think about it, with Jamaican patois, actually, it is the combination of everything that I mentioned before, but it's also a lot of slang as well. And this slang, it does not translate to other islands either. So when you're talking about, you know, from Chile, but then you have Dominicans, you have Puerto Ricans, then you have all these Ecuadorians and everything else. There's different types of this is where culture really becomes interesting, right? Because what we would say in slang in a patois setting or language, the Virgin Island or Trinidad or Antigua, any one of those, they wouldn't have the same slang. It would be a little different. And you would say, well, Jamaicans wouldn't say that, but TNT would say that, or, you know, Grenada would say that, but Jamaicans wouldn't say that. So there is a separation between the Caribbean islands as well. So it's interesting that you even mentioned that.
Yeah, you know, I think the interesting thing and the reason why I decided to do this live stream is because, you know, being on the outside looking in at another culture, so like me being Latino adjacent, you know, we make assumptions and we think that, oh, well, they're all the same, you know, they all speak the same, you know, and we don't realize until we get up a little bit closer just how unique everybody really is. You know, it's like, even with Spanish, you know, to us, Spanish is Spanish, but when you get inside of these other communities, you realize they have their own versions of Spanish. And
right.
People look at us as West Indians the same way too. Like the way American culture deals with us, they just lump us in one big barrel and they think we all do the same thing. Like they think all West Indians play steel drums, you know?
Oh, by the way, people from Trinidad and other places hate that. They think that they're all called Jamaicans and they hate it. They can't stand that. They're like, no, I'm from Grenada. No, you're Jamaican. No, you're not.
Grenada. What
I've noticed that too. Everybody like defaults the rest of the West Indian to like Jamaican. Like
Yes.
whatever Jamaicans do, that's representative of the whole rest of the Caribbean.
Yeah.
And that's not true. And I've heard that even from and just to my Dominican sister there and Radical Latino. The thing about that is it's always Puerto Rican. If you speak Spanish, you're Mexican or Puerto Rican. I live here in Georgia, and right away, if you speak Spanish, you're Mexican. That's not true. That is not true at all. And it baffles me to see that. Like, how could you say something as ignorant as that? Everyone's unique, you know, and they need to know that.
I think that comes from the American dialectic, you know, that comes from being I'll just say Americanized, you know, in America, all Latin people are Mexicans. You know, if you say, "Hey, I'm from, I don't know, Cuba," they're like, "What part of Mexico is that from?" You know, so yeah, so it's just a lack of education, you know, of a certain group of people that think the only the only world is Europe, Africa, and America. You know what I mean? So it happens. I've gotten called Mexicans by white folks a bunch of times. Like I'm like, no, but you know, but it's because of lack of education, and also ignorance.
I get questions I keep getting. Oh, you all speak French, right? Like, no.
What?
Oh, you're from Trinidad, right? I'm like, no, I'm Jamaican. Well, isn't that the same thing? Like,
No, and the thing is, and this is something I'll throw into the mix, which was very interesting because even living in the Bronx, there are lots of Dominicans who I identified with more. So even from from our food, it was weird. My one of my first girlfriends, for example, was Dominican, and her mother said to me, you can only speak Spanish when you come in here. Like she was teaching me Spanish, so I would have to respond in Spanish and everything else. But even when you
That's right.
right, and when we compared foods, it was astonishing to see the similarities. We would call it one thing, like we would sit down and we make something called bami, which is made out of cassava. And I said, well, wait a minute, this tastes just like bami. And she says, that is juca. And I says, what the heck is juca? And she's like, well, I says, we call this bami. It's like a patty that we make. But the thing is that, and even in Africa, for example, what they eat, we eat too, but we just call it different things. Even our seasonings are somewhat similar. So it's something as a Jamaican to really connect, not just with Jamaicans, but Dominicans too. It was a great, thing because there was more support there from that island, from an island perspective.
Yeah. No, son, Lean Nasperi says, yeah, the same for Asians too. All Asians look the same in Chinese.
Yeah, I have. So I worked for a Korean company. I'm in software, by the way. And so I worked with a Korean company when I was in New York. And honestly, Koreans, if you call them Chinese at all, they are extremely offended. And I can understand why. It's a whole different culture, completely.
Yeah, like calling me Mexican.
Correct. And I would find offense to that, honestly, if someone called me and I wasn't, and someone called me that. Yeah, I would.
I think I got so used to people misguessing my ethnicity, it doesn't even offend me at this point. Because it's always happened to me, always.
Yeah.
So.
Well, could I say this much? It got to the point where, well, you guys can't see me, but my skin is very dark and my hair is extremely curly. And so I would have a lot of Latinos come up to me and speak Spanish all the time. And they would say, como, and they talk to me and no, no, speak. I would try to learn and say, no, speak Espanol. And they would say, no, Dominicana. I'm like, no, Jamaica. I would say, Jamaica. And they're like, no, you Dominicana. No, I'm not. I'm Jamaican. So, yeah.
Yeah, so somebody has a question for Didi. He says, did you seek out other Jamaican Americans in your borough as a way of connecting with that part of your heritage?
So me personally, because I came so young, yes, I did. Jamaican Americans and first generation, because I think that at least the ones that were into their culture, because it was a reminder of home and we were connected in that way. Again, even with the white friends that I've had throughout my life, and by the way, there's Jamaican white and there's US white, two totally different things, but we won't go there. There is even the friends I have here, colleagues, I have to explain to them, culture is the thing that separates people, not really color, because Jamaicans don't look at color. We look at culture and financial situations. And so in that regard, I can tell you the culture, the first generations that embrace their culture, yeah, absolutely seek them out and have a great bond between the two, because we share similarities: music, food, and culture and sports. So that's absolutely something.
Truth. You could click on the comment and it'll show up on the screen.
Oh, really?
Click on the comment for D so she could read it.
Okay, so
there we go. See?
Yeah, I'm glad I thought about that.
Yes, you are a genius.
Yes, I am, and you know, it scares me sometimes. It's the level of intellect. So, Didi, this question is for you. You know, like, did you try to reconnect with other Jamaicans? You have to unmute yourself.
Yeah. Honestly, I don't like growing up in school, like I don't remember of any people like that were straight just Jamaican. There were other kids, you know, there that whose heritage was also Jamaican, and I had friends that were African Americans, but I never no, I never really got to sense or learn or know about my Jamaican heritage firsthand in that sense. Years later, you know, as an adult, you know, connected more. But as an adolescent or growing up as a young child, no, because my grandfather, when he left Jamaica and he immigrated to Chile, he never went back, not even to visit. Right? I mean, he had 14 kids, so he was busy providing for his large family. You know, the kids and the grandkids came and all that, but. And you know, and my grandfather also never really took the time either to instill that or teach his children that, because he was concerned about assimilating into Chilean life and culture.
Yeah.
That's why all I really knew growing up was just my Chilean heritage, and
your grandfather coming from Jamaica to a country where there weren't any other Jamaicans, I guess, for like survival.
Yeah, he was actually the first.
So he really made an effort to assimilate into the society.
Yeah, and he was there's an article, a news article about him that was written where he, you know, it mentioned that he was the first Black foreigner to settle in that part of Chile and, you know, start a family. He was very well known because he was also a boxer. And he worked in the casino in Villa del Mar. It was a very well-known casino, and whenever American actors or actresses or singers would arrive there to perform or to just spend a week or so, they would have him translate.
Yeah.
And but yeah, no, he went straight in and he spoke Spanish. He broken Spanish, but he was just all about the Chilean culture.
Well, interesting.
Yeah.
So, Loaded says, well, I would like to say about the pop culture, the fact that they lumped West Indians together had a lot to do with music. Music is a universal language and people connect with it emotionally. Yeah, I think that is true because, you know, within the West Indian community, I think we started listening to each other's music because we were dealing with each other now that we were here in the US. So, like, for example, back in Jamaica, depending on what class you're from, there's a certain class in Jamaica that at the time I was growing up would have nothing to do with reggae music because that was those Rastafarian people, you know, they're low class, they're low lights, you know. Respectable people listen to calypso, you know? So there was that thing, but as time went on and Jamaica became more popular, it's like most people listen to reggae, but now you come up here to the US, we kind of all mix and mingle. So when we have like parties, for example, you can't just have one type of music. You know, you go to a West Indian party, you're going to have to play some reggae, you're going to have to play some calypso, you're going to have to play some soca, you're going to have to mix it up, right? Because it's not just your own people. But, you know, as us also, I think being first generation or newly arrived immigrants, I think hip hop was an entry point for us into American culture. I know For me, it definitely was, right? So we all have our individual cultures at home, but in the street, hip hop was something that we could all share together. And if you look at the roots of hip hop, it really was a conglomeration of all of the cultures that were there in the Bronx at that time. So you had Kool Herc, who was Jamaican. You had Puerto Ricans were involved in it. African Americans were involved in it. So hip hop really was something that we all created. So that was something, that was like something that bridged the gap. It was a common ground that we could all share. I don't know. Did anybody else have that experience?
So a couple of things there. First thing is we need to look at what was Jamaica's music before calypso, and it was more something called mento, actually, which was played by a banjo. And I think I've spoken to some Puerto Ricans about this as well, and maybe some Dominicans that had mentioned it. It was just a banjo playing and so on and so forth. It's more folk kind of music. And so the calypso was something that was played. It was more the Caribbean united type of music. And so because of that, like you said there, it was something that the Caribbean listened to. Now, what Jamaica did, they listened to a lot of things that were influence coming in from the States. Okay, so a lot of jazz, blues, things like that. And then so you have rocksteady that came in, and then you have ska that came in that took over Jamaica's homegrown music based on a lot of things. And so then you have other, influences with the calypso and everything else. And then you have rocksteady, which is a slower version. And then now you have reggae music that came in with the Radical, with the Bob Marleys and everybody else. And so when you mentioned Kool Herc, that sound system, the actual records and how they did things came in and infused in. And that was another thing where, again, you're absolutely right. New York is a melting pot of so many different music that came into this and created this new music now. The basis, I don't want to say Jamaica because I know everyone's going to turn around and say no, but Kool Herc is one of the pioneers, and it brought everyone together to make what we have in terms of hip hop. Now, me first hearing this, or not even first hearing it, hip hop wasn't something that, or rap music wasn't something that came to Jamaica like that. But when we did hear it, it was something that made sense to us, because anything that America was doing, Jamaica wanted to follow. That was a thing. Okay, so I want to make that very clear. And then on top of that, when I came in the 80s, it was like that's when rap music was full force at that point. It wasn't in its infancy. I don't want to date you, truth teacher, but it was in the beginning when you came, but in the 80s it was full swing. It was something that we got into, and we felt it, and it was something that felt good to us, and we joined that culture as well.
Yeah, I could definitely relate to that because mind you, I was born during the late 80s. Growing up in the 90s, I was just listening to rap music outside, because that's everything that everybody was playing, and just learning the history of how it started with the big basses and turntables and stuff. Just knowing that and why they had to do that, because majority of the clubs wouldn't allow these people inside. Our people inside. They were basically segregating all the people from these Manhattan and Queens or Brooklyn nightclubs. So we said, you know what? Let's give me that the electricity from the lamppost right there, and actually let's have a party. For anybody that knows the history of hip hop has 5 elements. It used to have 4, but 5 elements. One element was added into it. Is DJing, MCing, breakdancing, graffiti, and knowledge. Those are the 5 elements of hip hop, and I'm proud to know that Black and Latin people were actually the instrument to even start something so powerful as hip hop that became a multi-million-dollar thing music industry, you know. So that those are the type of things that I think that a lot of us don't know, a lot of us aren't aware of. Some of us are, and we should at least show the accomplishments of some of our, you know, immigrant brethrens who did accomplish beautiful things here in America, you know.
Yeah, I have to agree with that, especially because I think every now and again, and I don't want to turn this into a whole music thing, but I think Kool Herc and I think a few others have actually contributed. They've had awards and they've been recognized as pioneers. I was watching a whole documentary on Fat Joe, for example. I was shocked to see how much he contributed to the hip hop community, and it was great. You know, that we need to see more of that, right? And it shows again the collaboration that made such a great music. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I don't think people really understand that. And I think, and I'm looking at the comment here, hip hop was, you know, a Jamaican and Puerto Rican, you know, mix. It really is because of the flavor that comes from the islands, I should say.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, Truth Teacher, you know you could hit the same comment to make it disappear, right? Just letting you know that.
Education is key.
Wow.
I heard Truth. I don't know. Well, you Truth Teacher's cousin, right? I heard Truth Teacher used to break dance back in the day. Is that true? This is what he told me. I don't know if this is a bunch of lies.
Well, I consider him my brother, my cousin, my family. Yes, he is a very great dancer. I mean, you have to remember when hip hop first started, like you mentioned, we weren't let into those places, and so he is one of the first people that started.
Is it true his nickname used to be Crazy Legs?
They had a few crazy legs, but yes, I couldn't dance to save my life in the beginning. So in terms of hip hop, because you know the whole culture of Jamaica was, and you talked about MCs, and I'll make it quick, but that started out by something called toasting that happened from a lot of artists back when, if you can YouTube it, you can find it. Yeah, Prince Buster and the rest of them, they would talk over a mic and they would just say things with a lot of echo and
master of ceremony. That's what it was called.
There you go. Exactly. So that's where it came from. And I think what I find interesting is that there was also a salsa movement in the 60s. So that was another thing in the late 70s. So that's another thing that, again, New York
contributed to it. Yeah.
Exactly. Right.
So I got a question. Didi, like, did you have the same experience that like music was a way to help you to integrate into American society?
Music was my #1 English teacher.
Really?
Oh yeah. I remember just with the radio, listening to songs. Babysitters that I had, they had they would bring over their cassette tapes and their little their radios and dancing and singing. But and I would beg my mom to buy them for me, and I'd have like show my mom this tape because I want this, and my mom, that was one thing that I appreciated. My mom understood that, and she would get them, and I just spent every day, all day listening. Then when I learned how to write, I was just like writing lyrics, to the songs. The grammar and the spelling was probably atrocious, but it was a way for me to connect and to feel, part of this society that, that my parents weren't a part of. Like they were there, but they were not from there. So that music was my connection to it bridged that gap for me. Between the world, my family's world, my parents' world, and the new world where they brought us. Because even though I was born here, from here, I still had a disconnect where it's like, no, but you're this, So there was like that pause button that was always put on me.
Mm-hmm.
Going to Chile, I'm not Chilean, soy gringa, soy Yankee.
Yeah, that's what I think we're here to discuss as well. I need to ask,
You jumped ahead.
yeah, I need to ask a question.
But yeah, so but to answer, yes, music was a major vehicle in helping me assimilate and feel a part of of this of society and feeling like one and unified with it.
So I need to ask a question. In Chile, right?
Mhm.
Because here's the thing. I know that, and again, coming from a very limited understanding, just from what I've observed, and the truth teacher touched on this earlier and said, when you're in a Caribbean type of setting, when you're playing reggae music, you just can't just play, reggae or dance hall. You have to play soca or calypso and those things. And again, this is for the upper class that would listen to a broad range because they're culturally diverse in terms of other islands. But in Chile, is it that I know that Dominicans, they have bachata and there's merengue and all these other things. Chile, what would someone from Chile listen to? Like, what would that connect all the Latinos together to listen to the same thing? Or is it, this is Chile, we're only going to listen to this and we're not going to listen to bachata, for example?
Okay. So no, that's a great question. So all the bachata, salsa, merengue, like all those are like the folkloric dances of those countries, and it's Chile's folkloric dance. It's really more reserved for Chile's Independence Day because it's nothing sexy that that you want to dance to at a party for, like. That's common, So Chileans folkloric dance is called la cueca, and really it's like dance, either like at the end of the night, to kind of like close the party out, like okay, we're gonna close the party out, we're gonna dance the cueca, and then that's it to wrap, taking it home, or it's it's September 18th and it's Chile's Independence Day, and this is what we do. So Chile, and that was the thing. It's like people would also ask, like, so what do you guys dance? What do you guys? We didn't dance. Even growing up, like first, my parents never even danced. Like, I learned how to dance just going to school and experiencing all that through school dances, through other Latino friends, going to house parties in Queens, and they would have the salsa, the merengue, bachata, all that. But Chileans just went with the flow of pop culture. So whatever was popping at the time, Chileans would assimilate to that. But Chile doesn't have its own defying or unifying dance that everyone can identify and say, oh yeah, no, that's Chilean.
Interesting. Now, Radical Latino, I'm going to ask you something. What's your take on that? I mean, are you, and just to remind me, is it you're Dominican or is it Puerto Rican? Like,
No, I'm Dominican and Ecuadorian. And what was the question again?
So the question is, what is your take on that? Because in Chile, it wasn't really popular, and I think it depends on time frames too, right? So
yes, because now it's popular.
Now it's popular, exactly. Yeah. See, that's what I want to get at.
Yeah.
Right. So what's your take on that, Radical?
Well, my take in, like, in Dominican Republic, there's a whole different culture and different music take on things. Like bachata is like the love song over there, what I mean? In Ecuador is more of the salsa, Ecuador is you can say Ecuador, Peru, and I think Central Americans have a lot in common in certain music and culture, but it's completely different. Things that happen in Dominican Republic, like, let me give you an example, like reggaeton, dembow, things like that don't translate well to Ecuador. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because Ecuadorian, not only culture but music is more, I'll say, traditional than anything else, but with Puerto Ricans, Dominicans, I'm gonna just put Cubans into it. It's more experimental. Let's have more. Let's have more freedom with it. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because, like, let me give you an example. When I went to DR, hip hop was more accepted over there than in Ecuador. Ecuador was like, what is this? What are they saying? You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
why is the beat so doom 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 doom? You know what I mean?
Right.
So it was more of a okay, no, it takes time for the traditional culture to catch up to what's happening in the U.S. And let's be honest, South America, all the Caribbean kind of looks at the U.S. as a cultural hub. Okay, the thing starts over there, and then it'll trickle down to us. You know what I mean? So, that's basically my answer to that.
Yeah, that's a good observation. And you mentioned reggaeton. I am going to mention this because, and I know Truth Teacher is laughing about this because I have a whole thing on this, and we'll get into this later or sooner than later, but Jamaicans are very proud people. And so reggae is something that we hold true to our heart because it is the beat, it's the sound of the people. It's coming from not the upper class. The upper class didn't take it until later on when they realized that it was worldwide and it was accepted mostly in England, actually. And so it's our music. But then I see where Dominicans started to pick it up, and now you have reggaeton. But I've spoken to some Dominicans that say, well, no, this is reggaeton. I'm like, but do you know where this comes from? Do you know the history of this?
It was
And they will
influenced.
not give homage at all. They will not do it. I don't want to start like a war or anything, but it's like,
No, it's true because
it's my music.
Because
it's what I grew up on.
Jamaican music influenced the birth of reggaeton. If it wasn't for that, then reggaeton wouldn't be a thing. You know what I mean? Like Jamaicans contributed a lot to the culture, believe it or not. White pants, colorful shirts.
Correct.
Right.
So when you see a Dominican, it's like it's so weird because even here, I happen to be a very flamboyant individual in dressing, and so
Yes.
I would favor a Dominican a lot because of the fact that of my dressing style. So in Jamaica, a lot of the influence in dressing comes from Europe. So our pants are a little bit more slimmer and we're more European, and a lot of them are. So if you go to, Dominican Republic, which I've been many, many, many times, you'll see people that dress like me. And you go to Jamaica, it's the same thing. The first time I went to Dominican Republic, I said, my gosh, these people, everywhere, just it really gave me a nostalgic moment of Jamaica itself. Unbelievable. So I thought it was very interesting. Yes.
Yeah. So this brings us in. I mean, like Didi, you kind of touched on where we want to go with this, right? The whole perception, because we're talking about all of this here, and here in the U.S. we have a really firm identity of being the ethnicity of our parents, right? For all the reasons that we just described, our foods, the music that we hear in our homes, and all these things, language, even for us in the English-speaking Caribbean, because our English is different than standard American English, it still sets us apart, So it's kind of, well, let me ask you guys. Having this idea of yourself here as Chilean, Dominican and Ecuadorian, Jamaican, when you went back to your motherland for the first time, how were you perceived? And was that kind of like a shock to your system, to your perceived identity? Didi, you can go first.
Yeah, no, yes, as I had mentioned, I was shocked. It was shocking, to hear, no, prima, tú no eres chilena, tú eres americana, tú eres gringa, tú eres Yankee. And I was just like, It was like, wait, but I'm not. I'm Chilean. Like, no, no, no. You know, like you were born and raised in the United States, you know, New York. So therefore, that's what you are. You know, so it was so confusing to me because I was like, you know, papi, I'm like, I'm gringa, you know, and he's like, and he, because that was always such, you know, like a negative connotation in the sense, you know, because when I would speak, you know, to a parent, oh no, te gringo, here in the States, it's like, you know, we were referring to white people. And so I was like, but I'm, you know, I'm not white, I'm Chilena. But, you know, it's then I had to learn, like, yeah, I guess I'm not. I go there and even, you know, with my Spanish, I don't have an accent per se when I speak Spanish, but it here in the United States, in New York, wherever, if I'm speaking Spanish, somebody could say to me, oh, you're Chilean, right? And I'm like, yeah. I go to Chile and they're like, you know, you don't sound Chilean, 100%. It sounds kind of neutral, your accent. I'm like, okay, that's interesting. So I'm just, you know, I just learned how to roll with it. You know, I'm not Chilean in the sense that I wasn't born or raised there or educated. You know, I wasn't in their school system, but you know, it's still within my blood.
Okay, so Tina, can you relate to that at all?
Well, I was 6 months old the first time I went to DR, so I don't know. But I don't know what I thought at that time. But growing up, I mean, I've always gone to DR. I mean, multiple times throughout my childhood, teenage years, adulthood, all that. So what exactly was the question again? Like, was I looked at as different?
Yeah, I mean, when you were old enough to have understanding, like, was there a conflict between the way people saw you? Because I mean, here in the U.S., given your circumstances, you develop a Dominican identity, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then you go back to the Dominican Republic. Was that identity challenged in any way?
So, I guess you could say a little bit, even though I think part of it was also just I myself began to feel a little like, oh man, like maybe self-conscious about it because like you said, here in the US, my identity has always centered around the fact that I am Dominican. That is how I've always identified. But then going back to DR and I guess seeing the ways in which I was actually different because while I mean of course there's a lot of similarity because I grew up and you know my home culture was a Dominican culture, but then actually going to DR, that's when I started to see the ways in which I was different and in which the American part of me became more apparent.
Yeah.
So I mean I would have those that you know would call me a gringa, which you know like I've told you that was very odd to me because I never ever considered myself gringa. But you know, over there they would say that and they would make that distinction. But at the same time, it's not like they rejected me. Like I never ever felt that. Like, you know, I always felt accepted and things like that. It's just that they would make the distinction. Yeah, you're one of us, but you still gringa though. Like you're still a little different. So that was more so, yeah, my experience when it comes to that.
So okay, so that's the way I would assume you had that interaction with your family back in DR.
Mm-hmm.
But when you were dealing with people outside of your family, like, was it the same or was it different in any way?
People outside of the family, I would say it was similar, even though, well, no, I think people outside of the family might see me more as American than my family. Yeah, I think that's more so what I've noticed.
Less willing to like, she's one of us.
Yeah, kind of. Because I don't know, it's weird because it's like they see you as different, but at the same time, again, it's not like they reject you. And then when it comes to the whole thing of speaking Spanish, like, okay, speaking Spanish here, if I talk to these Central Americans, oh, I sound Dominican AF. But in DR, it's like, you know, yes, I have that Dominican accent, but they can still tell it's a little different, you know?
So, yeah, your experience is very similar to Dee's.
Yeah, when it comes to the Spanish speaking. Yeah.
with me, it's like I had a similar thing. Like, growing up, well, I don't know. I had an interesting experience, right? Because growing up, woo, bloody hell, is everybody still there?
Uh-oh, crazy legs. Uh-oh.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh, uh-oh, uh-oh. Growing up, I was in this Caribbean bubble, right? Like, I had my mother's friends and everyone. It's like in the neighborhood I grew up in initially when I was born was on Wheeler Avenue in Soundview. So everybody there, they were either Jamaican or from some other Caribbean island or Cuban or Puerto Rican. So Spanish was actually my second language, because my next door neighbors were Puerto Rican. So I was over their house all the time. So I was kind of bilingual, But with that, my father was always listening to Jamaican music. I learned how to work the record player like as soon as I knew how to walk, you know? And so I remember my father, he would have me in his lap and we'd be listening to the record. He put the headphones on my head, and we were eating Jamaican foods, Jamaican products in the house. So I was Jamaican, and I thought that you were either, if you weren't Puerto Rican, then you were Jamaican, you know? So I go to Jamaica, like when I was 4, I moved to Jamaica, to live with my grandparents. And I remember we had a big house that had a really big backyard, and we had built a second house back there, and we used to rent it out to other people. And I remember the day we had this one family that was living back there, and the mother called me a Yankee. And I was like, huh? It's like, you're a Yankee. I'm like, I don't play baseball. you know? It's like, no, you're American. And I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm Jamaican. He's like, no, you're not Jamaican. You're a Yankee. I was like, I'm Jamaican. He said, where you born? I was like, well, I was born in America. So you're a Yankee. I was like, but my mother and father is Jamaican. Said, no, you're not Jamaican. You're a Yankee. So that was the thing, is like people would accept me until they found out where I was actually born. And then I wasn't Jamaican anymore. Then I was that American, So for all of my life, when I was growing up in Jamaica now, because everybody looks at me different, I started thinking of myself as American. And so when I was coming back, I was actually looking forward to coming back to the US because mom was here, mom and dad were here. And so I come back, I'm like, yes, I'm back in my real country now, I'm back with all of the Americans, and they're like, now I'm a Jamaican coconut.
Now you're not accepted because
yeah.
And I had similar situations. Again, I left at a very young age, and so now when your Black American or your other Latino friends come over, why is it that you're? And this is another thing, a culture clash with people who are ignorant. Back to the whole Mexican thing. Why are you cooking curry in your house? You're not even Indian. Why do you have curry cooking? Why does your house smell like curry? I've had that many conversations about that. It's just a different thing, and it's now you're in this this bubble where you don't fit in on one side or the other, and you're in a limbo. However, with me, I can claim that and say, well, yes, that's my country. Jamaica is my country. However, I can't identify with the Jamaicans that are living there now or at that time because I am no longer there. And I don't know if Radical Latino can identify with that as well. You don't go through the daily struggles like we do. This is your country, this is your dirt, this is your land, but you don't identify with us the way we identify with things on a regular basis. So even for me and you, truth teacher, we're in the same boat to some extent, because you're not here on the daily grind, the daily things, the daily everything. You may have some remembrance of things, but you are not us. And even when I go back, they can tell. Now I can switch up between how I'm speaking now and when I get there. Give me 2 days and I can get back into my patois again, and they cannot tell the difference at all. However, day 1 and 2, your skin isn't torched as theirs are. Even the mosquitoes know you're not from here. They know. It's a weird thing, because it's like, okay, I've been away for a while, but when it comes to where you're born, the mosquitoes don't care, and the people, unless you put yourself in that same mindset of the day to day understanding and the mannerisms and everything else, they can tell you, they can spot you a mile away. They can. You've been away, or you're not from here. They can tell. So even if, let's just say, you were born in Jamaica and you've been away for a while and you came back, they can tell right away. Either you're not born here, or you don't live here, and they don't care. That's the difference. And I have to make that very clear. You're not part of them anymore, or you never was.
Yeah, I felt the same way. Just to answer Truth Teacher's question, I pretty much, it's safe to say, I think every insert nationality name here / American feels the same way. I think when they go back to their home country, maybe give or take certain other experiences, but going to not only Dominican Republic but Ecuador, the same thing. I was called a gringo. I wasn't called a Yankee, but I was called Americanized. Which
Right, correct. Yes.
which I never denied. I'm like, yeah, I am Americanized, which means I have running water.
Depending on where you're from, but
yeah,
yes, you're correct.
Yeah. So to them that was my little comeback. Like, I don't drink juice out of a bag, So
Wait a minute. Hold on. Let's take a pin. Bag juice is the best thing in Jamaica.
No. It is. At least I have to have at least certain jokes just so I could come back, their little BS of Americanization, So I obviously knew, I had to learn how to just adapt to that environment. Okay, don't feed the local dogs, obviously. The bathroom is an outhouse. Our security house system is glass on top of the little gate thing. So I know those are the type of things I had to learn. Also part of the culture of certain, not only certain, because certain foods I would eat here, but other things I had to learn. Also, according to them, my Spanish was either broken or my Spanish wasn't Dominican or Ecuadorian enough. In Dominican Republic, they said I sound Puerto Rican for some reason. And in Ecuador, they said I didn't speak proper Spanish. And I'm like, I got a passport that could get me anywhere, so screw you. So that was like their form of it. And I did feel alienated at first, but then I had to like retract back and say, you know what? It's how they view me and identify with me, which is totally cool. It's totally fine. Now, the people outside of my family who I will interact with, if I would take a taxi somewhere or whatever the case is, they would see me the same way, but also give me some leeway, if that makes any sense. I don't know if that makes any sense.
It does a lot.
Yeah, they will give me some leeway, but to my family, no, you're Americanized, you're not this and this and this. And when I explain it to them, well, when we go back to America, we don't identify with America, even though us as immigrants or first gen to whatever gen, we have done things to actually make our experience here a lot better. We actually done things to actually put out, like I said, like we talked about hip hop. It was immigrant born. So those are, like, maybe I'll say those are our parts of our culture. You know what I mean? That we are doing here in America. And our people back home don't see it like that. You know what I mean? They see it like, no, you had to be here when things were rough, when the hurricane came and you had to survive, when it was 7 feet of water and we were over here, drowning with our luggage and stuff. Like, I get it. I totally understand. But I also see that I see their point, but I also see our point as well, which I'm going to actually say a statement, which is actually something beyond, I believe is beyond past the topic. As Latin people here in America, since there is an identity crisis, I think that politically we need to actually identify with a race, at least politically, so we can at least have an identity of our own.
We'll start talking that shit now.
Wait a minute. Now this is where I come in to say this and represent Jamaica to this from this perspective. In case anyone is not aware, the motto of Jamaica is out of everyone people. So what does that mean? And it's so weird because even my son, the first time he went to Jamaica, he says, "Why is this Chinese man speaking like this, like you, Daddy?" And I says, "Well, because he's a Jamaican." And he says, "Well, he's Chinese." And I says, "Well, no, his race may be Chinese, but he's a Jamaican. There's a difference." "And why is that Indian man speaking like you, Daddy?" "Because he's a Jamaican." There's a different flavor in Jamaica of a melting pot, just like New York. Okay, where it comes to people. So it's a little different, but I do get what you're saying in terms of identifying a race to say we are Latinos or we are, I get it.
Yeah.
But Caribbean people are so, the evidence, Truth Teacher and D, this is how Jamaica is. We go everywhere and we have children with everyone.
Can I clarify really quickly?
Sure.
I don't want to derail the whole topic, but let me just clarify really quickly on why I say that. Is because Latin people here in America have been given a label that we have not thought of or have not been a part of the conversation, where Latino, Hispanics, Latin, Latinx, all of these labels are given to us. We aren't at the table, at the forefront, actually saying this is what we are. And on top of that, Latin or Hispanic or whatever we want to identify, it's not a race. So that causes confusion, not only confusion, but also causes division. So you have certain Latin people who identify more with Europe and other Latin people that identify more with Afro. And then there's a division within the community, not only inside, but also outside, with which I see that Latin people, should be united, all as one people, black or white, doesn't really matter. And we should at least have a race classification that should not only protect us, but identify with us,
Agreed. And I love that, right? Because I think that, again,
you said that I'm right, people. You see that?
Yeah, no, you're right. You're absolutely right in that regard, because I think that, and again, this is from me on the outside looking in, I keep hearing, again, why was I considered Dominican? Why couldn't I be a Jamaican that looked the way that I do? Why couldn't a Chinese, or because I'm mixed up with some Indian, a lot of European, actually, a lot of German, actually, and there's a place in Jamaica where there's nothing but Germans there, and that's where my grandmother is from. So when you think about that,
was from Seaford Town.
You know where there's a place called Germantown in Senti, true teacher. Senti.
Another
Saint Elizabeth.
another same thing, Germantown and Seaford Town.
The Germantown people, right? So
You
they're
see,
straight from Germany, okay, and they came there because it was hard times in Germany at the time. There's even Jewish people in Jamaica, and they're only in one spot, and they commingle. So,
yeah.
There too? Damn.
oh yes,
Yeah,
oh
they're
yeah, there's a
everywhere.
whole
Is there a
population of.
Chinatown there too?
Oh
We have a
yes,
lot of Chinese
Oh,
things, yeah.
China started to come in the 1800s as indentured slaves, and so did
Yeah.
India because of the fact that they abolished slavery, and so they need people to work the sugar canes, and because of that, that's where you have. So that's part of. Now I don't have Chinese, but I have Indian, right, from India, right, and German, and your West Africa mix in me. So therefore, if you look at me and I'm speaking, you would, well, not speaking, but you look at me, you would think I'm Dominican, because that's what I was saying, is that I look a lot. When I went to the Dominican Republic, I said, my gosh, they look like me. And they were speaking to me in Spanish, thinking that I am them. And I'm like, no, I'm not. So, it's a thing where it's such a, when you talk about race, it's such a mixed up thing to kind of make a definition of what is and what's not. I have had friends who were Dominican who were blonde hair, blue eyes, and it's like they identify with Europe more than they would their Afro side, which is fine if that's what you want.
yeah.
But do understand that you and his brother look like me. So it's weird. It's like your parents look one way, one child comes out looking one way, and the other child looks like me. And then it's, so when you have race included in this, it's a very strange thing. And it depends, it's to the person to say, you can't say you're pure European from Spain. You can't say that because it's so mixed, right? And my thing is, why not enjoy the mixture? Because I think that's what the world should be, in my opinion. I can't say for anyone else.
You're 100% right. There's
Right.
certain people that I don't know why they deny certain aspects of themselves. It's like denying certain parts of your family,
Right. And
It's
then look at D. I mean, when you look at a truth teacher and look at D, look at that mix. It's look at her and look at him. That's what this should be about. And whatever you identify with, embrace that and say, well, I'm more European. Okay, if that's what you want. But do not don't discount everything, because that's what makes you beautiful inside.
So Didi, what would you say like to what Rad said, that Latinos should have like a race, they should have some kind of term that identifies them as a race?
she agrees with me. She agrees with me. I can answer that. She agrees with me. No, no, go ahead. D?
Didi?
You're on mute. You're still on mute.
Truth teacher, you could unmute her if you want.
There we go. I couldn't find the little thing. What do I feel about us having a specific, like identifying with a specific race, you're saying? That's to me, that's tricky. In a sense, like, I guess it's what you feel comfortable identifying, yourself with. As a personal, in a personal perspective, I always identify, and I always, I am, and I give out the percentages. I was like, I am 3/4 Chilean and 1/4 Jamaican. So, like these things with like the boxes where you have to check, well, are you this or this or this or that? Like, I wish there was an option where you could just write, what it is that you are. But, I guess it's to each personal perspective and what you feel comfortable.
Let's also talk about the children. I have 2 sons. When my son asked me, because he had a they did for history and geography. They did a whole thing, and he was given Jamaica actually, which I thought was hilarious. I says, "You're gonna get an A in this class." So when I spoke with him, and he says, "But Daddy, what am I? I don't know what to say." And I said, "Listen, you are an American born, but you're Jamaican. And why? Culturally, you are Jamaican. Your nationality is one thing, but your culture is Jamaica. Always remember that." I talk some patois in here. What's a great example is my wife, for example, is half Guyanese and her father's from Jamaica, her mother's from Guyana. She does not identify culturally with either. She is strictly Brooklyn, and that's it. So I play calypso or soca music or reggae music, and she's like, "Okay, enough." It's like it's been the whole day, right? For example, you wake up on a Saturday and you clean your house, and the house have to be clean. And Sunday, especially Sunday, you have to have your rice and peas, and the house have to be clean, and you eat dinner by 3 o'clock. Now, what's interesting about that is I know Latinos that identify with that. The house comes first. But some Americans who are first generation they do not embrace their parents' island of anything. I, for one, instill that in my child. So I make him have a comfort level of who you are. See? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think
I
that's
think I'm going to be the same way with my girls as well. Or go ahead, Trisha.
I mean, that's another element that I don't think we've ever touched on when we've had these kind of discussions, is that there's a certain group of people who they come to the United States and they just want to forget everything about back home.
That's true.
Right. Yes.
They want their kids thinking about it, so if they speak Spanish, no, I'm going to teach you English.
That's out of fear, don't you think? Because we do have certain people, I don't want to say no names, but a certain person here on YouTube said the same thing. The reason why she doesn't know Spanish is because I believe she said that her parents didn't know it, because their parents, when they came from Puerto Rico, Spanish was looked down upon in the community that they settled in New York, which is kind of weird. But anyway, that's their experience. I shouldn't, judge that. But
where in New York they settled,
and in addition to that, what time frame?
We have to
think about that.
Right, you're absolutely right. So no, I believe she says she's like what, third or fourth generation. I don't know, but that's the reason why she doesn't know. I'm sorry, what?
I think she's third generation.
Okay, so I'm corrected then. Third generation. I think that's the reason why she doesn't know Spanish. So, like Truth Teacher said before, and everybody in the panels said that, trying to instill the culture. So, it's a good thing, obviously, but there's also certain factors that we got to look into why, that instillment isn't there. You know what I mean? And which goes back to this conversation of our homeland to America. Now with that dynamic, these people that don't know Spanish or isn't in touch with their culture, but still claim to be, I don't know, Puerto Rican, Dominican, or whatever the case is, they still claim that from their parents, and they go back to their homeland just to visit, and the people, will they accept them more than somebody that's first gen, that's more in touch with the culture than they are? You know what I mean? Because you hear stories of they were completely rejected by their parents back home, their family back home, because they didn't know nothing about the culture. You know what I mean?
So to your point, Radical Latino, you mentioned something earlier when you went back. It's like you wasn't here for this, you wasn't here for that. There was a hurricane that hit Jamaica in 87, 88. Okay, Gilbert. Now, I went down right after Gilbert to bring shoes and clothes and everything to family members. But and during the time they had to eat like, you know, your traditional poor people's food, right? I mean, even some of the people who had it, you eat tin mackerel or bully beef or you eat this and that and whatever. But the thing is that you didn't suffer like us. You didn't have that time where you never had this and what the case may be, and you don't know what it's like to go out. And by the way, when you're in town, you don't have an outhouse. When you're in the country, you have to go walk a mile to go to the bathroom. Just an FYI. But my thing to you is, it really depends. You did not suffer like us. You have your, unless you had a dish back in the 80s, you only had that one channel. When you had a dish, you had access to you know, cable. You can have multiple channels unless you had it like that. So if you were not your average person, you didn't suffer like us. You don't know. You are not us, and you will never be us because you did not go through that experience as we did as Jamaicans. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
So, you wanted to say something before.
Oh, yeah, going back to the point about parents that actually like they purposely don't teach their kids Spanish. I have a friend who is half African American and half Cuban. Her dad's a Black Cuban, and her father came here as a refugee. And I don't know what, it seems like he has some type of traumatic experience in Cuba, but he does not talk about Cuba. He doesn't want to talk about what happened there. And, she's told me that he told her, like, what you need to know Spanish for? You're in America, you're like, we're here in the States, speak English, and he himself completely assimilated pretty much into American culture too, specifically Black American culture. So, I think that's a real experience for a lot of, children of immigrants here as well. For whatever reason, their parents decide you're going to be American. In America, you speak English. We don't need to be speaking Spanish.
So one thing I can tell you, and this is back to Radical Latino, and also you, I find it very disrespectful, my personal opinion, for a first generation not to know Spanish. I'm sorry. Why not teach your children that? Why not? I mean, I get, and I think also it could be the experience that you've had in your island, because let's just say you've had a very traumatic experience. You don't like your island, because remember now, if you're at the bottom of the barrel, there's either high society or you have, poor people. And if your experience was so bad, I know people here now and my relatives that have not taught their children anything about the culture at all because of their experiences in their island at the time. And because of that, these first generation, they know nothing about, they're just now in their 40s and 30s going back to Jamaica now to learn what it is and the culture. And I find that to be very shameful. Why are you doing that? Why?
Yeah. It
hurts.
I know people that come up from Jamaica, right? They're born and raised over there, but I'm more Jamaican than they are. They come up here and they just become completely American. You can't even talk to them about anything about Jamaica. You try fly your Jamaican flag. Oh, you better not be doing that around.
No, they're upset.
I'm
They're upset.
American.
Why would you have this Jamaica flag? You're here in the States. You're not a Jamaican. You're American. Yeah. No. You're a Jamaican.
I'm not in Jamaica now. I'm here in America. I'm American now. I don't know nothing about Jamaica. I'm American. I don't want to see you putting no Jamaican flag on the car because you don't know, somebody might come around. They don't like Jamaicans and they're gonna vandalize you.
You must listen to me.
What Rad said. There's an element of fear there.
Yes. But at the same time, you have to be a patriot. I can say that. You must maximize Jamaica, Dominican Republic, wherever you're from at all times. You can be who you are in the States, but do not diminish who you are as first generation. You must be proud of who you are at all times. Never hide it, because all it does is it maximizes your pride of where your parents are from. They came here and you came here, or your parents came here for a purpose. but do not forget who you are. And that is my problem. Do not.
I got flags of Ecuador and Dominican Republic all over my house.
Oh, dude, listen, my car is ridiculous in my home, and my wife is like, "Really? The flag in the living room, big old flag. We're not listen."
One of my best sheets is my flag. No, let me stop.
Dude. I was about to buy one. Listen, you need to. And my son has four shirts. Anytime Jamaica Independence happens here in Atlanta, my son comes with me, and he has his flag. And you're going to know you're Jamaican too, culturally, always. Do not forget.
You know who I found to be the proudest people, like in my experience, is Dominicans and Puerto Ricans. To find a Puerto Rican, you will either look at their car or see a tattoo in their arm. They'll have a flag somewhere. I swear to God, either is a flag or is a coquille. You know
Coquille is always there. Yeah, coquille has to be there.
And for Dominicans, it's the same thing: a tattoo or something in their car. You'll definitely see something around there. But you're right. You're right. Identifying with your culture and just doing it proudly, unapologetically, I think it's something culturally beautiful. You know,
it's very beautiful. And so I went to so some years ago, I went to a conference. A technology conference in Germany, and so I was presenting, and these were over 500 people there. And so the projector on my laptop, even at my job, I have a Jamaica flag. The entire screen is Jamaica flag. So when I was done with my presentation and I turned off my PowerPoint, the flag was on the screen. I'm like, oops. So, but the thing is that I wasn't ashamed. I says, yes, anywhere I go, I maximize Jamaica. And so should Dominicans, and so should Peruvians, and anywhere you're from. I don't care if you're second generation, third and fourth and fifth. Okay. Even then, maximize your history, maximize where you're from. It's the pride. Our ancestors did not work hard, or your parents did not come here for you to diminish who you are. Be proud. Don't ever forget.
So we just like went into a whole bunch of questions that I had here. So for anyone else on the panel, did you ever have a period of time in your life where you had this conflict of, are you American? Are you, the ethnicity of your parents? Do you ever have like that hard time adjusting, or like an identity crisis?
Before anyone answers, Tyrone, truth teacher, can you please just mention, let's just remind everybody, what is ethnicity?
Okay, so ethnicity would be the social or national cultural group that you come from, as versus the concept of race, which is a biological
right
a construct based on biology. So for us, our ethnicity would be Jamaican. For Tina, her ethnicity would be Dominican. Didi, her ethnicity would be Chilean. Nationality now is, those two things can overlap. But for the sake of those of us who were born here in the United States, our nationality is American. Race, that's a whole other ball of wax, like what the hell that is,
Let's not go there.
Discussion. Like that's a big
let's not go there, please.
We're not having that discussion today. But back to the question, and like everybody, you can unmute yourselves and just like, did anyone ever experience like a sense of
an identity crisis? You said,
not really.
Yeah, not like no, just I'll say it was more of a confusion than identity crisis.
Confusion in what way?
Confusion in, as we said previously, going back to our our parents' home country, and being called Yankees or American, instead of accepting us for what we're identifying as. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just a culture shock or whatever. Just the confusion, not the identity crisis. Because when we come back, best believe everybody else don't see us as American. Let's be honest. So, if we really want to talk about the confusion, let's really talk about the confusion from our parents' home country and here. They don't see us as American. Over there, they don't see us as what we identify. So what, we're gonna make our own island? You know what I mean? So as long as this is our home, because we were born here. So the fact that we are identifying with our parents' home country, but yet are Americanized, because we know the aspects of America that they do see us as other. They do see us as, insert nationality with American here. Doesn't give the confusion of identity. It doesn't. I'm sorry. It doesn't give the identity crisis. It does just give the confusion a little bit until you get better understanding of where you're from and what you are, and that's when you'll learn to navigate. So it's more of a confusion instead of identity crisis.
So I need to say this. When it comes to being where you're from or where your family is from, the question is, how do you? Because again, I'm just using Jamaica as an example. I only heard about Puerto Rico. I've been 1 or 2 times. My aunt is Puerto Rican, by the way, who's a Jamaican that married a Puerto Rican. But in Jamaica, when you come from, again, the country to town, the English or the twang, or we say twang, or the patois is different. For example, in the country, me a go down there. Well, what the hell does that mean? Or shubi. So me a go down there means I'm going down there. You go to the city, they don't speak like that. So now we're talking about the Spanish, back to D. Spanish, you're saying in the country is one thing, in the town is something. So again, we're speaking about 2 different, even within the country, we're speaking about 2 different things here, 2 different dialects. So if we're going to talk about the first generation, the prejudice, and I'm going to call it that, and I have to speak about that for my children as well. Are you saying that because a person comes from the country going to town, that person in the country is more Jamaican than the person in town? What are we saying if that's the case? What are we saying about my children then, right? You have to think about that.
I'll put it to you this way. I think that wherever we come from, if you want to really connect with the folk culture, you have to get out of the city and you have to go into
correct, right? Because
in the city, we're exposed to all kinds of international influences, right? I guess we're a bit more Americanized, any city that you go to, because we're so connected, right? But if you want to really find that real folk culture, you have to go into the country.
Then my question is, why would D go to the city part and be rejected? Or why would I'm sorry, I think her name is Extra. Sorry, what was her name? Christina, right? Christina. Why would you go to Dominican Republic now, or Dominican Republic, and you would go to the city of Santo Domingo and be one way? If you go to the country, you'll be called something else, or you say the outsiders, not your family, would say you're not Dominican enough. Depends on where you are. Is that not true, or is that a true statement?
I mean, I suppose, yeah. So I mean, there is that difference between the campesinos, as we would call them, and like the city people.
Exactly.
Yeah. hmm But I guess I never really thought about that though, as far as how the country people view me versus how the city people view me. I don't know. I never really thought about that.
There's a difference because you see, you have to
Mhm.
remember the country people are more ingrained into the more roots of what traditionally is, what's there. And
Yeah.
for example, if I go to, again, Tyrone, truth teacher, if I go to West Milan now, right? And at the bottom, and I'm sorry for being so detailed, that's just me. If you go to the country and you have rice, and you eat the rice, the most of the rice, and the bottom of the rice is, we call it bun bun. But if you go to, I guess, DR, or you go to Puerto Rico, they call it con con. This is the bottom of the rice that and that's great with some gravy, by the way. But anyway, if you look at that in the town, nobody's not going to eat the burnt rice at the bottom of the pot, right? And we say, it's that a garbage. We don't eat that in the city, but in the country, it's a bun bun. So it's different. So again, if you're talking about differences and prejudice in the States for first generation, we also have to consider the country versus city, and then look at that and make a determination. Right.
Yeah. I mean, but I think that's a universal thing, right? I mean, like there's always that distinction between, country as versus town, right? Like if you're in town, you're perceived as being more educated, more sophisticated. And if you're from the country, you're kind of low class. You're like a bumpkin,
Right.
I think that's a universal thing everywhere. We have that prejudice,
So that's why I say, when you go back, who are you speaking to? Are you in the country, or are you in the city where people are more sophisticated, so that your Spanish is not so foreign? Or maybe it's a combination of such, because you have been around other Latinos that speak different dialects of Spanish.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I don't know. What do you guys think? As the Spanish-speaking panelist.
Yes, Spanish-speaking panelists, yeah.
Well, I would say my Spanish is the most different when I'm in the countryside because, they have a very distinct way that they speak.
Right.
They switch a lot of letters like R's for the E sound and stuff like that, at least in DR. And like the Cibao. So, I don't know. I guess that's when it's most apparent. And also because of the living standards is also the most different from American. So that's where it's not uncommon that a lot of the houses don't have, indoor plumbing, or, they have outhouses, stuff like that. So I think when I'm in the country setting, that's where the difference is most apparent. But it's weird because at the same time, I don't know. I like being in that setting at this, also. And I feel like when I'm in my parents' town of Bonao and also in the country, that's when I feel like I'm in the real DR. Not that I don't feel that in Santo Domingo, but I don't know. It's just a different feeling. But anyway, I feel like I'm going off subject. But yeah. But
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, go ahead.
I was like, Didi, what's your perception?
I mean, I was just always viewed differently, whether it was with family in the country or family in major cities in Chile.
Mm-hmm.
So they were equal opportunists, discriminatory against me. Equally just be like, nah, you're eating that. So and had family in the country where you go pick out the eggs from the chicken coops in the morning to go
right.
Whatever, they kill the rabbit, choke it, hang it upside down, let it drip, and had family in Viña and Santiago, and it was, and there were the up, but you just saw me as gringa across the board, and to get back to the identity of the ethnicity, I came to terms to just engulf or accept just being Latina, because for a while, because I didn't have any other or like other interactions, like say in school, because school settings is like major part of your life when you're growing up, so because I didn't have any other Chileans, I was just like, well, I came to terms with, I'm not going to like struggle to find, that Chilean identity. I'll do that when we'll go to Queens to like family friends' houses that are Chilean, or the Chile's Independence Day, out there. But I just came to terms with saying, you know what, I'm Latina. So if I'm friends with, Puerto Ricans, Dominicans, Salvadorians, the commonality that we have in that sense that I to accept and appreciate was the language, was, the love of music and dancing and moving, in that form of expression. So I just, that's how I came to terms with it, because I did struggle. For a while, and that clash with, especially with my mom, with, well, you're Chilean, you're not supposed to be speaking this way because they speak that way. And she felt like, oh, well, we're up here because we're Chilean, South America, and, everybody else. I was like, so I never saw it that way, because I maybe because I was born and raised here in a sense. I just felt like, no, but what you're thinking of them as down here, and I'm mixed into it, so I just, so like I said, the commonality for me is the language, their foods that we share that are similar, and music and dancing.
It's interesting because I kind of have the same perspective, right? Because I've been away from Jamaica a long time. I left in 1976, right before all the shit hit the fan. And, like for me, my situation is different than E's situation, because he still has family that he's connected to. And ironically, even my brother, my brother and I, we have two, different fathers. And on his father's side, he has family back there that he's still connected with. With me, I never really had that. And the other thing is the difference between E and my brother, right? I'm 10 years older than they are. So I remember what Jamaica was. Them coming along like 10 years later, they didn't have anything to compare it to, so they just accepted it for, it just what it was. For me, though, emotionally, it was very traumatic, because I saw how severely things had changed, and not in a good way. So I kind of retreated into myself, and I kind of preserved my memory of the Jamaica that I knew. Now relating to other Jamaicans, I don't know. For me, it seems like Jamaican dude, 44 years ago. Yes, I'm very well preserved. That's right. You follow me, El Leon. When you get to be this age, you can look this good too. Anyway, I've been doing it all along. So, for me, I had to be Jamaican on my terms, because Jamaicans can be very brutal.
Very, yes.
When it comes to dealing with first generationals, And for me, there are aspects of my culture that I really love. And then there's aspects of my culture where I'm like, no, that shit gotta change. Like I'm not co-signing that shit.
Here's the thing.
So,
Jamaica has evolved. Again, I don't, and it's so weird because my father retired and said, and I think someone said it earlier, I want to retire and go back to Jamaica and set up my house. And, and your mom want to go back, and the time that he went back, I'm retired now. I send money there. I have my land there. I want to go back. And when he went back, it was like, this is not the Jamaica I left.
Yep.
It's completely. So we have to be very clear about timeframes. Okay, we have to think about that. The Jamaica that he left is not the Jamaica I know. Jamaica where it transitioned from one TV station, like we said before, unless you had a dish, to cable. When cable hit Jamaica, it was an entirely different Jamaica. Now it's what you want this from America and want that and everything like that. And the crime and everything went up in the mid 90s.
Yeah.
Very high. But he said, I am not moving back to this place. And you are not either. And I says, well, you tell me what to do. I can. I'm still looking into, have my little place that I'm looking into now to kind of, but I'm used to the new Jamaica. The Jamaica, wasn't
No,
even my
Jamaica no
father.
longer.
It wasn't even my father and mother's Jamaica then.
Yeah.
But it was a complete.
But it was close. The Jamaica I grew up in was much
closer, right?
Near Jamaica,
Correct.
But now Jamaica, I know dead and gone long time.
Dead and gone. I mean, because Jamaica now is like a whole. I mean, their views on political situations, even the violence, everything has changed. It's not the same. It's just not Jamaica. The only time you're going to get the true Jamaica is if you go to the country.
Yeah.
And a lot of those things have not changed, but in the town and city places, they have changed dramatically. Now
Can you ask you guys something? Did it change for the best? Did Jamaica change for the best or for the worst? I'm asking you this because this is not the first time I heard a Jamaican say this.
Mm-hmm.
And I talked to this is like a couple of years ago. I spoke to a very older Jamaican man, like 80 something years old, and he said, I don't know why he said it this way, but he said the reason why Jamaica is the way it's in is because of the infidels and the gays. I'm like, what?
Okay. Well, let me go back.
I was completely thrown off. I'm like, what do you mean by that? but this is not the first time I heard Jamaicans say, "Hey, it's bad, it's bad, it's bad," or it changed. So was it?
I hear Jamaicans say that all the time.
Yeah, I know, right? So did it change for the better or for the worse?
So what's interesting is this. And I'm going to mention DR and Puerto Rico a little bit here too, because at least then again, I don't know. Maybe you can give me more insight on that. But Jamaica is a place where, first and foremost, there is more churches there per square mile than anywhere in the world. Okay?
Really?
So, yeah, oh yeah. Well, then again, there's Georgia, but we won't go there. But yeah, it's a place where you can be a gangster and you can control an area, and you can have power. But then this is the same person that can come home and read his Bible every night. Okay, so it's based a lot of it is based on the Mosaic Law, if you know your Bible, which I'm sure everyone here from the either Caribbean or other Latino countries can say what they gonna say. God bless. That's the way they are. So when we talk about Jamaica in terms of lifestyle, homosexuality, yes, they can say at one time it was not something as prominent because the older ones believe in this is not what we do. This is not who we are. We're not into certain things. Okay. But as time goes on, from a lifestyle perspective, it's in their eyes, it's ruining the Jamaica they knew. That's one. Two, politics has ruined Jamaica. Okay. So you have people who have money, and you have people, there's no middle class. You either have it or you don't. And that's
really
it. Oh yeah. The middle class in Jamaica diminished in the mid to late 80s. I want to see mid to late 90s. It does not exist. So it's either you have it or you don't. You have a good amount that don't, and you have a very good amount that has. So they're driving BMWs, they're in mansions, they're living very, very lovely. And same thing with DR, in terms of what I've seen in Santo Domingo, things like that. So when he says, it's just like how Trump would say, "Make America great again," it's like "Make Jamaica great again," kind of thing, right? homophobic situations, and we've seen it with the artists and stuff like that. Again, it is not a concept that is indigenous to Jamaica. So when you find those kind of things, it's like, well, you ruined Jamaica. It's not Jamaica that we know. Now, it's always been there, but it hasn't been as
But it
prominent.
was more, people would be more discreet, nobody
Discreet about it, exactly.
But who's the infidels? What was he referring to? Who's the infidels?
Me no know.
Well, okay. You have some people now that they are not there's certain traditions that I know for a fact, because of speaking to the people from Latino islands that have said the same thing. There's a certain standard and way of living. There's a certain thing that has diminished in terms of keeping your house clean, for example. Okay, that's a big thing when it comes to Jamaicans, and I know Dominicans are the same way, and Puerto Ricans. The house.
Yes, we
you
are.
go inside the living room, the figurines are everywhere, and the this and the that, and
I got a bunch of candles in my living room.
You already know, right? The candles is there. It's the whole thing. It's not. It's diminishing. It's not the same homegrown thing. They're becoming to Americanize to the point where it's diminishing the values and standards as what they had before. That is what he's speaking about.
And then like even the change in the educational system,
and the educational system, because what's interesting is, and truth teacher, you can speak about this. I'll kick back because I left when I was very young, but you can speak to this as well, to some extent. The educational system was amazing.
Yeah.
What you would learn, okay, they have first form, second form. These are like, first, second grade, right? Then you have a CXC, your A levels. And so when you leave, I would want to say maybe about fifth grade, you're doing college work at fifth grade. College work, sixth grade, college. Not high school. So when you come to the States and you're in high school, you're bored because all this stuff you're straight.
It's really interesting you say that, because they did a study. Actually, I read this last year. They did a study saying that the U.S. educational system is actually below some of these third world countries.
Yeah. But now the thing that happened is that Jamaica, when the CIA came in there and destabilized everything, they changed up a lot of things. And one of the things that it seemed to me like they changed up is the educational system. Because from what I can hear now, the children in school down in Jamaica, they're just as rowdy as children here in America.
They're a mess.
That never listened.
Because of the infidels. No.
Well, I guess that's what he meant. Listen, when I went to school, you couldn't even, when you were in school, you had to speak standard English the whole time. You can't chat no patois. You come in school, you can't chat no patois. I remember one time. Listen, I remember one time, right? I had a fight with a girl in the class. And okay, it was my fault because I was being a dick, right? But she provoked me. She started it. So I grabbed something out of her hand and started a big fight. The teacher, what is going on? Well, miss, I had this and that, and I had this thing, and then him come and him grab it out of man. Now, mind you, I'm the one that started the problem, right? Like, I'm the one in the wrong. But now she went and she chat patois in the classroom. Teacher turned around and looked at her and said, grab it out of man. Grab it out of man. What kind of language is that? So now she's in deep shit. Because
she'd never speak proper English. And here's the thing.
Yes, she got
here's the thing about this. Here's an example. Here's an example. And I don't know how other Latino countries are, but you have to have the utmost respect for your elders. For example, you cannot go around and there was a time where I remember I love to whistle, so I'm there whistling. Listen, you're a little boy. How dare you? You're around me whistling and like you're a big man. You're a little child. Know your place, and that's it, and that's Jamaica, and that's the way it is.
It's funny because what Truth Teacher was talking about his classroom is like it was like my home. My mom was like, "Mijo, no me hable inglés en la casa." Like, don't talk English in the house, because in the house was all Spanish, you know. And I had to speak to my mom in Spanish. And whenever we do go out of the house, that's when she'll switch it into English. You know what I mean? It's like really weird. Like, we're in the house. Sí, hermanita, lo que estamos haciendo is we're gonna go outside to the supermarket. I'm like, wait, how the hell? What the hell? You know what I mean? Just like in the house is Spanish, and then once the door opens and she leaves, is, you know, all English. Because I really don't know why she did it like that, but I kind of understand a little bit, you know, because like she wants to keep our traditional culture, you know, somewhat alive in the household. You know what I mean?
So didn't you like experience something similar? Like, you were the UN interpreter, right?
Are you talking to? Oh, okay.
Yeah, Didi. I mean, yeah.
Yeah. Yes. So there are 3 of us. I'm the oldest, and my mother would. And I was just the middleman between my parents and the English speaking world, especially my mom. So I'd be out there. She'd be like, "Okay, so I could only speak to her in Spanish. We're household." So now, my brothers, as the one that follows me is 3 years old, when the youngest we're 5 years apart, and they don't speak Spanish as well as I do. They speak it kind of like Tarzan style, in a sense. They don't conjugate their verbs. They use, you know, vocabulary with the wrong, you know, gender identification. It's just like it's whack. But they get their point across. But it's like they were never forced to have to, you know, speak. So whenever I would speak to my mom in English, she's like, "No, no te entiendo, háblame en español." And I'm like, "Really? You don't understand me? So how come you understand that when over there?" No. And it was so annoying because, you know, she's also sexist. My mom's straight up sexist, and she'll admit it. She didn't even care. She goes, "Well, boys can't get pregnant." So I didn't do anything.
That's true. That's true.
That's another cultural thing. It's like my father said to me, "Listen to me. Your sisters will find a man, and they will take care of them." My father said to me, "You must get an education and you must go as high as you can, because you have to look after a female who is your wife." You understand? Again, culturally, it's another thing.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. When my sister came back, I think was it from college, and my mom always had this thing that she wanted to teach my sister how to cook. Mija, ven acá en la cocina, te quiero enseñar algo. It's always like, "I want to show you something," and then stay there for 2 hours teaching her how to cook and stuff about different things. And she came back like in her turn, in my mom's turn, she came back crazy feminist. In reality, she came back educated, right? So my sister is like, a woman's role is not in the kitchen, right? And my mom, this is like the first time she ever heard. She's like, "¿Qué, qué?" So to her, it was something out of the world. Obviously, me. I'm a little instigator, so I'm like, "That's right. Your place is in the kitchen, so you better stay your ass in the kitchen and just make babies." But I have to understand that my mom comes from a traditional line where women were just their role were unfortunately were in the kitchen, and that's something that it was taught. And the thing is that even though my mom was, in a traditional way like that, she also had her own education. She was a psychologist, which makes no sense, because I'm like, wait a minute, you want to teach my sister how to just stay in the kitchen and basically provide for a man, but yet you have an education out here. That makes no sense. But yet she would use her psychology to mess with me. She's like, "You don't know what you're talking about." So, but the thing is, it's like, I gotta understand that my parents, even my dad, thought the same way. You know, like my dad was like, "Why is she bugging out? She needs to learn how to cook." And I'm like, "Don't you see that there's an issue in this?" You
Right.
know?
Well, you know what's interesting is, and truth teacher, you can correct me if I'm wrong. Now this is where I think maybe the cultures differ, and again we go back to first generation here in the States. Part of culture is food.
Yeah.
Okay, it's music, it's food, it's sports. Okay, because even my son, I know we say football, but he knows it as soccer. So I said, even as a young, even at 5, soccer camp. You weren't playing basketball, you weren't playing American football. It's soccer camp, and that's it. And I have my cleats down, in my house and whatever, and I play with him. But the thing is that Jamaican men are known for cooking well. Interestingly enough, at a young age, my mother, and I think I remember your mother too, our truth teacher, would sit down and talk and say, listen, learn to cook. Why? As men. Why? Because if your wife left you or leave you, you won't go hungry.
Yes, that's what. Yeah, yep,
Okay.
yep, yep. My dad told me the same thing. My dad
Right.
told me the same thing. Yep.
So I think it may be a Latino thing too, but we learn to cook. So the men in these immigrant, these cultures, they cook well. Like me personally, I cook almost every meal in here in terms of my culturally my food. So if it's oxtail or rice and peas or whatever the case may be, I'm gonna cook it because that's how I was raised. At the age of 11, I was
Hey everybody,
inside there.
Tina has to jump out.
Well,
So
bye, Tina.
bye to Tina. Tina, thank you for
Bye,
joining
Tina.
our live stream.
Bye. But
Okay, what you were saying now?
yeah, but culturally, it's something, and it's funny that you say women places in the kitchen, but men can cook in that culture, in the Latino culture apparently, and also other cultures as well in the Caribbean. Men cook well. We don't. Okay, because the woman's supposed to come in and take care of us or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
Traditional, and I'm not saying us now because we are who we are now, but traditionally, yes. But
Yeah.
we can, and we can sometimes cook. My grandfather, my gosh, was a chef. The man can cook his behind off. Like wow. Better than my grandmother.
Wow.
So that's something to think about.
It's funny that you say that because my dad told me the same thing. I don't know, maybe he was talking about one of my uncles because it got a little too personal because he was like, you better learn how to cook because if your wife leaves you and you got to go back to a 1-bedroom apartment and have a minimum wage job. I'm like, what? What are you talking about? No, but I did learn how to cook from my dad and from my mom. A little bit more, from my mom because my dad, he was, working and stuff. But yeah, I did learn how to cook, and I do know how to do my little things here and there. But no, that's really interesting that you say that because yeah, my I didn't get that conversation from my mom. I got that from my dad.
Right.
My situation is a little flip because when I was growing up, my mom never let me anywhere near the kitchen except.
That's why you can't cook. The only thing you can make is cereal.
I do know how to cook. I just don't like to. There's a difference.
Crazy legs.
There's a difference, So, but by the time my younger brother came around, he learned all of that stuff. Like me, my thing is I love to eat. I hate to cook because the thing about Jamaican cooking is it's very time intensive.
Very involved. Extremely involved.
Yeah, you can't listen. You go to a Jamaican restaurant, it's either going to be really good or really bad. There's no half stepping.
But the thing is though, true teacher, it's the same thing with Dominican food. Now I love pernil. Listen.
Oh yeah, pernil.
Look,
yeah.
Oh my God, and tostones and listen. But I know that food. This is what you call, and again, back to the first generation that can cook that food.
Oh yeah.
Okay, we have to think about that. The first generation. This is learned from the grandparents and the parents, and they're here. And I want to make this very clear in terms of this discussion today, is that coming down from culture to culture to culture, these are things that you may put your own spin on it, but you're learning from the grandparents and everything else. So the way you speak comes into it. If you have Chile food that you're making, that you can cook, your Spanish that you speak, or the dialect of the Spanish, the food you cook, your religious beliefs, your sports, your music, everything ties in together. You know what I mean? So I know that even with Jamaican food, very involved, but I know Latino food is very involved because, okay, for example,
Oh yeah,
right.
very, very involved.
Yeah,
Right? We dance in the kitchen while we're
Frito,
cooking. We even talk to ourselves. Yeah, very involved.
Yes.
So unless you're a cheap ass and you go and you buy that shit in the bar.
No, man, we're not doing that.
It was only one time. I didn't have time. It was only one time. I didn't have time.
So for example, to show you the difference with Jamaican food, the main ingredient are two things: it's Scotch bonnet and pimento. For Latino food,
I thought you was gonna say Dr. Bonner's label. Okay, sorry.
No, Scotch bonnet pepper, that's hot pepper. But in Latino food, I don't know, in Chile, maybe D, you can give me more insight, but sofrito and cilantro, that's it's a whole different flavor, right?
Mm-hmm.
You gotta add that in everything.
Adobo and all that.
Adobo, yeah, all that. You gotta
have as white people call it adabo. So yeah, yeah. Well, I remember I went to Manhattan and I was like, "Hey, miss, do you know where the adobo is?" And she's like, "Huh?" And then I'm like, so I showed her a picture. She's like, "Oh, the adabo, it's over there." The adabo. I was like, "What?"
Oh my God, it's terrible.
Yeah, and then when I'm walking away, she's like, "I never tried that stuff. It's really popular." I'm like, "Yeah,
it's very good." Oh yeah,
yeah, I think you should try it.
I put it in some of my Jamaican food sometimes here and there.
Listen, Didi's got to jump out soon, so I just want to get her perspective on this last question, and then I'll put the link down below. So anyone you want to join the live stream, you'll free to. So being that you are here in the US, right, and you've reconciled your identity, right? Yeah. What aspects of culture do you hold on to, and what do you see as, what are your ideas or your feelings about, your children and your grandchildren and how, what their identity will be?
Great question. I would love to preserve my Chilean culture, with my daughters, especially, with language. And I feel like they will identify, I want them to identify as Latinas, although, my husband's Jewish, my youngest, she's his daughter, my oldest is from a previous marriage, but I still want them to identify as Latina, because that's language that I speak to them, that my parents speak to them, that they're surrounded by, at family functions, at my parents' house with traditional, foods. So, in all this, I really would love for them to always, hold true to that.
Yeah.
And find, and I want to be able for them to travel to Chile. I haven't, my oldest hasn't been to Chile in a few years.
Wow. Yeah.
But, and the youngest one still hasn't gone. So I want to be able to, as they get older and after COVID, to be able to engage them more with the motherland, with Chile, with firsthand knowledge of where their grandparents came from.
Yeah.
Where I used to spend my summers, almost 3 months, and during the winter break, spend, all winter break plus an extra 2-3 weeks, for that. I want them to have that sense of that identity, because even though they're Americans, but I want them to know that, we come from, a line of different line, that I don't want you to forget, that I want you to hold on to.
D, I got a question for you, D. Will you keep some of our in American ways, some of our parents' toxic culture, toxic? I'll say toxic culture.
Good question. Really good question.
Would you keep that same thing, like women's places in the kitchen, or would you take some of the things that worked and leave the things that doesn't work? Like what is your
I feel like I don't want any of that toxicity because I felt like I had to fight a lot through that. Like, okay, so my parents almost fell on their asses when I played on a boys lacrosse team at school. So they were like, oh my God, eres lesbiana. They thought I was a lesbian. You're a feminist. You're gonna start wearing combat boots. And I'm just like, no, there's no girls team. So I'm gonna have to try out for the boys team. I don't even want to play sports. So like that stuff, I don't like that. I want to weed out. But I do appreciate is the language. That my mother instilled, like, I don't know what you're saying, no te entiendo, dímelo en español, like, I don't understand you, say it to me in Spanish, because that preservation, I appreciate. So I would like to weed out as much of the bad stuff, and the sexist aspect of the, of our upbringing, and have them focus more, trying to get a healthy balance.
Yeah, I agree. Same here. I don't have kids, but if I do, I'm gonna be the same. Yeah, I'm gonna be the same way. I don't, that whole, thing, like everything is equal. It's totally, but yeah, I'm gonna have to go also. But for what, before I leave, I want to just say thanks to everybody here. Thank you, D. Thank you, Truth Teachers. Was it cousin? Thank you for having me, Truth Teacher. Thank you for having me here. I didn't know that your name was Crazy Legs. That's kind of cool.
Very funny. D. Do you guys have cuy in Chile?
No, that's Ecuadorians. That's guinea pig.
Yeah, that's my stuff. Shut up.
Yeah, no, they don't have. They don't. That's not part of Chile's Chilean plate.
So do you eat mango with your cuy?
Hold on, one last thing.
No, we eat rabbits.
Yeah, one last thing I want to say. I love the fact that you are, and by the way, Radical Latino, bro, lots in common there, man. I really like it.
Yeah, yes. We're not different at all.
We're not that much different. And B, I love the fact that you're doing this from a language perspective, because your mom said to Chile, this is what we want, but at the same time to remove the toxic type of living as well. But language and, again, sports, religion, especially food, it's like music. It's the same thing. Please teach them.
Yeah.
Take them, whatever you can. I love the fact that you're doing that, because so many of the immigrants don't do that. And so I love that about what you're trying to do there. And I love that a lot. Please continue. Get them there.
Yeah.
I want to say, Truth Teachers donate is $ Radical Latino at Cash App, so you could donate to him through there.
We'll be donating. Yes.
No. I'm out of here. Let's just recap on what we learned. The reason why our countries is like this is because of the infidels. Sexism is good. Women's places in the kitchen. And no. We had a wonderful conversation. We learned a lot. I actually took away from this that we have a lot of similarities than we think that we do apart. And also there is a commonality within first generation through whatever generation, American immigrants that come here, and we do have that commonality that we can basically, we have that bond. You know what I mean?
Right.
We have that bond that we can definitely relate to. So with that being said, thank you very much. God bless, and I'm gonna catch everybody later. All right.
All right. Thank you, bro.
Thank you for having me.
Yes,
Great meeting you guys.
So this has been my first live stream, and thank you guys for helping me make it successful. Mr. E, Didi, I'm glad that you could be with me here today. And
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
most
you
likely
too.
we'll do more live streams in the future. You know, so
We,
this is
we probably, if you can, we need to do one on colorism. I'm just gonna put it out there. So
okay. All
Great.
right.
All right. Forward to it.
Join in on that, but we'll talk.
all right.
Sweetie.
Bye.
Bye-bye. So, Mr. E. Well, everybody, thank you for stopping by and, you know, like making my first live stream a success. And I guess next time I'll figure out how to do that donate button thing. But thank you guys for coming along, and I will see you guys the next time. Peace.